Hello and welcome to my director's commentary for the Velocitronian Cup. Just want to say this video contains spoilers, so check out the episode first. But firstly, this opening shot of Velocitron, I just want to say it's a recreation of Velocitron planet in the Cybertron cartoon. So when we first see Velocitron in the cartoon, we see the planet, and down to the position, the colours, the space clusters, the dust, everything is an exact replica of the cartoon shot. And this title sequence going across is meant to simulate a car sort of driving past. Now, there's several stages in the Velocitronian racing, so I'm doing a trilogy. So this is the first episode in that trilogy on Velocitron, and this is intermediate racing. So, like I said, there's several stages, and we'll see the next stage that Blur progresses onto in the next Velocitronian Cup installment. Now, I just want to say, Override is the ruler of the planet right now, but anyone can rule the planet of Velocitron if they're fast enough to win a race. It's kind of like the Olympics, but for Transformers, and it's the race outcome in this, when Blur actually wins, that is going to be concluded in the next Velocitron sequel. So this race is so many long and hard laps around certain parts of the planet. They cross checkpoints at certain times, and it can be a rough race. They don't have to race by rules. They can race dirty or fair, as Override says. Now, Blur is very young. He doesn't understand rulership, and he's not taken into account the responsibilities of leadership. If he wins the overall race, not this race because this is the qualifiers, but let's say if he goes on to be Override in a later story, he hasn't taken into consideration the responsibilities of leadership. People just want to be the fastest, and they want to get to the finish line the fastest. They don't really take into consideration how to rule a planet and how to govern it. So at the end of this episode, we see Override giving Blur a 20 astrosecond head start, which is around 20 seconds, but because Blur is a beginner, he's not a complete beginner, but he's not like Override at this stage. Blur's fast, but he's not as fast as Override. Override is taken back when Blur flat out refuses to take the head start, but she knows that Blur, even with a head start, is not fast enough to beat her, and he's not on her level at this point, and he's exhausted from the race already. So, Blur is still overconfident. That's something to know as well. But a few other things that I actually want to talk about is the personalities of the characters. So, you've got Dirtboss and Ransack, who... The thing with Dirtboss and Ransack is the reason why I use Dirtboss is because I don't have Crumple Zone. So I always wanted to have Ransack and Crumple Zone, but I never got Crumple Zone, and I actually thought it would be good to have Dirtboss, because Dirtboss isn't a character who... we see him in the Cybertron cartoon, but I don't feel like he's developed as much as the other characters. So we got Ransack and Dirtboss. Ransack is smaller and he's weaker, but he's got more brains. Whereas Dirtboss is bigger, stronger, but he's got less brains. He's a brawn. He's not stupid, but Ransack might be the type to lead Dirtboss astray into bad paths. Ransack and Dirtboss are not criminals. They aren't villains, but they are the typical kids in, say, school or college that you think, I don't really want to be around them. They're the type who hang out in street corners and think they're the tough guys, and when a real tough guy comes around the corner, they run away. That's who Ransack and Dirtboss are. And like I said, Ransack can maybe mislead Dirtboss if he really wanted to. And it's quite funny as well, because in this episode we do see Dirtboss mass shift. So that's something maybe canon in my series now, but we see Ransack going on top of Blur in his monster truck mode and causing him to, fall behind and crash. But we actually see Dirtboss, because the figure is not big enough to do that. If you own Blur and Dirtboss, you know that I can't really pull that shot off where he goes on top of Blur, but he mass shifts to do that shot because it's something I really, really wanted to get done, and the only way I could do it was mass shifting. So, mass shifting is it canon in my series now? Apparently so. Another character I want to talk about is the commentator. Now, the commentator is actually a retired former racer. If you are English, we call it football. If you're American, you call it soccer. But in football matches, you often get commentators or people getting interviewed. You know, when there's a match going on, you'll get people commentating and people getting interviewed. And often these people getting interviewed are former players themselves, giving their take on what strategies they're doing, what's good, what's bad, if a certain team's losing or winning, what they think, can they pull it back. That's what the commentator is. He's a former racer. He's interviewing Override, but, you know, the commentator has, you know, expertise on racing anyway. And one thing I actually want to talk about is the fact that while all this is going on, we have Override and commentator going back and forth, having a conversation, but you know, while we're actually seeing them driving and racing and everything like that, Override and the commentator would be having their own private conversations in between what we actually hear their dialogue. So that's something interesting to actually note there. With this expanded universe, I really tried to capture the look and the feel of Velocitron in the Cybertron cartoon. I don't know why, but Velocitron in the cartoon had a feel to it. I don't know if it's just me, but it had a feel to it. It felt different, it felt alien, it had a vibe to it, and I really tried to capture the look of that. Just how you could look at this planet and know that it was scorching hot. You know, everyone's racing, they're going to be hot anyway, hot and bothered, but, you know, the temperature of the planet, you've got the red hot sun, you've got a general warm environment, and I just wanted to, you know, bring that into the series, because this episode actually takes place quite, you know, late in the evening. It's not in the middle of a day because, you know, the sky is, it looks like the sun's setting and we've got that nice sunset glow. So it is late in the evening, but I really wanted to capture that feel of Velocitron, and I hope I did. And this episode was actually harder to make than it looked. It wasn't just effects, keyframing, color correction. I had to make the wheel movements turn. I had to get all the 3D environments. And this is the first time I've ever used 3D environments, full environment. So I used a planet and I used a studio that Override and the commentator are sat in. They're both 3D environments. And it was difficult to do, but I feel like it was good. I felt like for the first shot at it, I did okay. Now there are certain 2D parts to this scene, like I guess you could say the sort of Colosseum, the racing big building that they're all racing towards, and when we see them race past a town in the background, that's all 2D pictures that I made, but yeah, it's generally a 3D model set. And while we're actually talking about that city in the background when they're racing, I also want to say that's an abandoned town. What I'm doing with Velocitron is they tend to build cities and abandon them fairly quickly. It's just a sort of ritual of Velocitron to build something and use it as much as they can, and once it's served its purpose or it's old, they move on to the next biggest and fastest thing. And you won't notice it, but if you zoom right into that abandoned city in the distance, you'll see vines going across, you'll see electrical wires with vines hanging off it, you'll see that the actual buildings are broken down and abandoned, and it's just not lit up, it's all dark, it's an abandoned city. And I thought it'd be interesting to have that in the background and just have all the mountains covering it a little bit and show that there's no life there, and, you know, that's the past where they've come from, and maybe they'd race through it, you know, as part of the race is to actually go through that town perhaps. But I just wanted to sort of talk about that because it's something that it's a fact that you probably see but you don't think about. You can hear certain things in the background, such as crowd cheering when Blur crosses the finish line. You can hear booing when Ransack and Dirt Boss cross the finish line. You can actually hear a sort of like a robotic sort of voicing replay when Blur and Hotshot get taken out. Those are just little things that are in the background. I just want to say as well, I actually have a behind the scenes of this on my YouTube channel, so go check that out if you haven't already. I'll leave the link to that in the right hand corner of the video right now. The overall production was interesting. I had to remove all the logos for the characters, the Autobots and Decepticon logos. That's something I would have done anyway, but I do that a lot in prequel stories when the war hasn't broken out yet and Autobots and Decepticons aren't really a thing. But yeah, it's just that extra little final touch. Another thing what happened is one of the lines from Ransack when he talks to Dirt Boss about Blur's tech specs, that was actually an improv line by the Ransack voice actor. And speaking of voice actors, we actually have some new cast members in this story. So I had myself as Dirt Boss and Hotshot. We had Bella as Override, Harrison Gottfried as the commentator, we had Jack as Ransack, and Dark X Paz as Blur. So it was interesting to get new voice actors on the project because it's good to get fresh people, new faces to the project, get other people on board, brings new energy onto the project. And I just want to say, welcome to the new voice actors and the actresses. It was a blast and I can't wait for you all to return in the sequel. Something a little extra that I did with this behind the scenes that you might not notice is the transformation sound effects are different. So when we hear Blur and Hotshot and the others transform, the sound effects aren't normal Transformers because it's an alien planet that's different and separate from Cybertron. They're aliens to Cybertronians, so they're bound to sound a little bit different how they transform. They're racers, they're not fighters. They are quick converters, not so much as, I guess, heavy converters with like tanks and planes. They're fast and speedy. And when we actually see the racers cross the finish line, we see Blur just fly past the finish line, but Ransack and Dirt Boss kind of go a little bit slow. They don't go past the finish line very fast, and that was intentional because Ransack and Dirt Boss basically give up. They are in it for the money. They're not in it for the glory and the fame. They want the money. They basically give up and think it's not worth it anymore, and they just don't bother tiring themselves out over it. But we do see Hotshot kind of speed in, and when he got knocked back all that way, when he got pushed back by Dirt Boss and Ransack, he really does try and make up for time. And even when Blur's won, Ransack and Dirt Boss have crossed the finish line, and Hotshot actually speeds across the finish line, so he does try and make up for time. Whereas Ransack and Dirt Boss, they don't really care. And you actually see I use brick walls on the sort of finish bit of the track. The audience generally would be sitting above them brick walls on seats, but it's just like a little tunnel that they would have gone in to sort of slow down, and then that's when Override comes on. It's funny because while we're talking about the characters and Blur actually originally was going to talk like his G1 self and his animated self. He would have talked fast, and I think it's Cyberverse a little bit that made me think maybe Blur doesn't have to talk fast. Because originally I did have another voice actor for Blur, and I believe Ransack as well, or Dirt Boss, I don't remember. But originally we had a voice actor for Blur, but sadly they couldn't commit anymore, which, is fine, and I hope they're doing the best that they can be doing. But originally we were going to talk fast, and I was happy with that, and then over time, when they couldn't commit and I was looking for another voice actor, I was thinking, how do we make Blur unique? And I thought, why don't we actually make him talk normal? We don't have to get him to be fast, we can just have him talk normal. It's funny because as well, Blur's sort of engine, his engine noise, is actually from a drone. So, Blur's a hover car, he doesn't really have any wheels, where the others do. Maybe that's why Blur's faster, because he doesn't rely on wheels, he's hovering. But yeah, his engine is actually a drone. When we're on the production topic, the music for this, I got a lot of comments about the music. A lot of people told me that they liked the music. The music choice was, I wanted something high energy, and what I went for, if you've played this game, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. What I went for was high energy music like you were driving in Forza Horizon. When you drive in that game and the radio comes on and you hear all these summer tunes and the radio going, the people talking on the radio, all these presenters, and the songs going from the first to the next to the next to the next. And it's this high energy pump action, and that's what I went for with this project, and I think I did achieve it personally. So while we talk about some sort of miscellaneous notes just to wrap this commentary up, I just want to say Blur, he has supersonic speed as we saw, but at the start he was quite, Ransack, Hotshot and Dirt Boss were on Blur's tail. But was Blur really trying at the start of this race? Probably not, because even though he's going for time, Blur knows he's faster than everyone. He knew he was gonna win, and he's not really trying all that much at the start. But Hotshot genuinely believes that he is faster than Blur, and Hotshot wants to win as much as Blur. And if you like this video, just know that you can make this video as well. I know it's intimidating sometimes when you start editing, but once you get the general idea what you want your story to be and how to make certain things happen, you can make anything possible. It's nice to write this sort of story where it's separate from the main canon. This is still canon to my universe. It's a very different vibe, and that's why I like it, because it's not your typical Autobot versus Decepticon. It's different. Now, my Velocitron isn't actually sort of connected to Earth or Cybertron. Maybe there's something underneath. Maybe, I'm not saying if there is or not. I've not got to that sort of stage of it, but it's not like it is in Transformers Cybertron, where they all bring the war to Velocitron. It's its own separate planet. They don't know about Cybertron, they don't know about Earth. As far as they're concerned, they are the only living Transformers in the universe. One final point I want to say, if you enjoyed the Velocitronian Cup, just know it was pretty much a lost episode. For years I had this on my computer, and I filmed it, and it got pushed to the side when I was making the End of Days Part 1, and then other projects got in the way, and I just never picked this project up. And when I did, I'd pick it up for a week or so, and then I'd just never touch it because of one reason or another, whether it were other projects or something personal in my life. And there's been a few occasions where I thought I'd lost the files, and there were a few occasions where my PC was acting up and it just almost died. So this has been a project that has sort of been a long time coming and remained unfinished. As I said, to summarise it, this is basically a lost episode pretty much of the series. But it's out now, it's a found episode, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, please give it a big thumbs up. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, join the Discord, link in the description below, and follow me on Instagram, TFan5000. If you are looking for more Transformers stop motions, check the right hand corner right now for a 4.5 hour stop motion of my Earth Wars saga so far. That's all the stories that's happened on Earth since the Autobots arrived there. That's been made so far. There is going to be more additions as I make more Earth Wars saga installments, so keep an eye out for that. There'll also be the War for Cybertron saga and some other sagas that follows. Other than that, I hope you have a good day. Take care. Till all are one.